Grab your cup of coffee. Sit down for a story. Let's all go exploring. Making it after 40. Making it after 40. Making it after 40.
Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me for this week's episode of Making It After 40. I am your host, Lisa Rodriguez. I am an actor and writer who is still trying to make it after the age of 40. On this show, we explore what it means to be an artist trying to make it as a middle-aged person. Today's guest is Los Angeles-based actress Saudia Rashed. Saudia started her creative journey as a dancer at a performing arts high school in Texas. After moving to Los Angeles and finding that the dance scene was not a good fit for her anymore, she shifted her focus to acting. Her journey, like many others, is full of trial and error and learning on the job. We talk about lessons learned, finding your comedic voice, and transitioning into new casting categories as we age. I could have talked to Saudia for hours. It was such a great conversation. Also, I thought you all might want to know that at some point I referenced my garden and the lessons I'm learning from my tomato plants, which have been late bloomers this year and are only now producing fruit. I saw this as a reflection of my own life and that I am also a late bloomer. Well, ironically, since this conversation, we have experienced a windstorm, and my tomato plant fell over and crushed my jalapeno plant. My husband and I were able to pick it up and secure it into place again, so I guess the lesson also has to do with weathering the storm or being resilient, even when hope seems lost. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot we could read into it. Anyhow, thank you all for tuning in and enjoy the show. I am so excited to share our first sponsor, Rustic Winds. Based out of San Diego County, Rustic Winds is a family-owned and operated small business that produces handmade artisan soy candles and bath and body products. Rustic Winds uses IFRA-regulated and certified fragrances, and their products are palm-free, vegan, and made from organic oils. I love Rustic Winds products. Their custom blends of scents are incredibly delicious, and they are free of phthalates, sulfates, and parabens. It really doesn't get better than that. I personally have been trying to cut back on plastics, so I ditched my shower gel in that plastic bottle and switched to using their cold-processed bar soaps. My personal favorites are birthday cake and honeysuckle jasmine. If you're looking to support small business for your holiday gifts, or maybe you're looking to change things up with your regular body care routine, please check out Rustic Winds on their website at www.rusticwinds.com or check them out on Instagram using their handle @RusticWinds. For my listeners, they're offering new customers 15% off. Use code MAKINGIT, MAKINGIT. Check them out today. Hi, Saudia. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Of course.
Yeah, and Saudia, I don't remember how we met, but somehow I ended up being Facebook friends with you. I don't remember if it was through one of the mom groups, or if it was like an actor meetup or what. But
it might have either been through one of it was probably through a mom group. I would say either through the ones that we know that we're the pal or Nella. One of them.
Yeah, one of them. Yeah. So anyway, we were just saying, I only know you through through our interactions and mom groups and following each other on Facebook. And so I really appreciate you coming on the show. I know that you're an actor and you're also a podcaster.
I am, although I've taken a bit of a hiatus, but yes.
Yeah. The podcast life is rough. I mean, it's like once that train gets moving, it keeps going and you got to keep up with it. And you're like constantly interviewing, editing, promoting. It's a lot.
Oh, yeah. Like I loved it, but I had to get off for a moment. I had to get off the ride for a tad bit. I was like, this is great, but now I need to get off for a moment.
Yeah.
So I plan to get back on next year. But
awesome.
Yeah, I call it an extended hiatus, my podcast, That One Blank Friend.
Yes.
So yeah.
So Saudia, you're an actor based out of Los Angeles, And you are a mother, and you are also over the age of 40, and, building those credits, living that actor life, trying to balance it all. I'd love to hear about how you ended up here acting, and we'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I knew that question was coming, but then
Yeah.
it all seems so daunting, like when you actually have to like say it all.
It's like,
So,
where do I begin? How
I
far
know.
back?
It's like, where do I begin? I'm just gonna literally begin at the beginning because I feel like, we're here. Why not give the whole
Yeah,
story?
absolutely.
So uh, as a child, I danced, I acted, I loved performing, and I would say my journey started really going to a performing arts high school.
Oh, wow.
I
That's
did a
cool.
little acting before then. I'm from Dallas, and there's a very, very well known school there, Booker T. Washington High School for the
Mm.
Performing and Visual Arts, um, which actually just celebrated its centennial,
Oh,
the
wow.
high school. But yeah, it's known for everything. It's got some pretty reputable names attached to it. But when I was going there, it was just kind of like, this is where the kids go if you want to be artistic, if you want to be in theater, if you want to be in
Yeah.
dance, if you want to do visual arts, if you want to be a musician or a singer, that's where you go. And I had actually done a handful of acting before I went to high school. And so I auditioned for both the theater department and the dance department. I already knew one of the teachers in the theater department, but it was kind of like, I knew I really wanted to go to the school. And it was kind of like, well, might as well just audition for both and kind of see where I can fit in. And it turned out that they put me in the dance department.
Oh.
And I was super disappointed at the time
Yeah.
because I loved dance, but I was kind of on the acting train at that point.
Mhm.
And, a part of it feels sort of fate because they just didn't have the space for me in the theater department at the time, but they did have in the dance department. And it was kind of like, all right, I guess I'll go and, do this first year in the dance. And then, it was kind of like, well, you can always switch, when you're a
Yeah.
sophomore. It turned out I really loved it. And when it
Yeah.
was time to switch, I was like, yeah, I think I want to keep dancing. And so I danced throughout high school. I went to college as a dance major at the University of Texas at Austin, which had their program was at that time more of a contemporary modern program. And again, towards me being a senior in high school, I was kind of like, I got that acting bug again. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. I think, I want to maybe do some more acting. And so in college, I started auditioning for professional stuff. Like I would
Yeah.
fly to New York and audition for things. I would fly to Atlanta and audition for things. And not a whole lot, but if it was something I
Yeah.
really, really want to do, it was like, I just kind of went for it.
Yeah.
And I think through that sort of exploration and then moving back to Dallas after graduation, I sort of realized I really wanted to not be so much in the dance world or even the musical theater world because I was kind of leaning towards that. And I had done some musical theater. I was like, I really want to do acting. Like that's what I want to be my focus. And but again, the dance thing started creeping up again because I had a friend that was living in Los Angeles already, and she was working as a dancer, and she had an agent, and I knew that was kind of the big thing I needed.
Yeah.
And she was like, come move here. If you, if you just come here, you can totally like, my agent will love you. It'll be fine. And we worked together in Dallas. So she knew like that I was a strong dancer, and she was just kind of like very encouraging. And at that time, my college roommate had just moved out here. Like she'd been out in LA for like I think a year and a half at that point. And I had other people from college out here. So it was kind of like hey, it's not as much of a leap as I thought it would be. Like I kind of have sort of a support system. So I did it. I'd say 2 years. I think I was about a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years out of college, and I made the move to Los Angeles, and I got the dance agent, and I started auditioning, and I immediately was like, whoa, I'm out of my element, because it was that idea of being I was a big fish in a small pond. And then here I was, like, this dancer. I was classically trained, lots of modern dance, lots of Graham and Horton. If anybody out there is familiar with those dance techniques, and, jazz and all of that. And, like, I was in on that. Like, I knew it, but the LA dance world was and is very much whatever is recent. So at that time, it was, hip hop. It was like you had to do hip hop. You had to have what they call tricks. If you could do acrobatics, if you could, you couldn't, there was no such thing as twerking then, but if you could do it, that was like the thing that you did at the auditions. And they literally would have sections of auditions where it was like, okay, you do the technique. And then, like, the people who aren't very good with technique, those are the trick people. Then they have, like, special auditions for the trick people. So I was very much out of my element, because I wasn't, to be honest, I was not a strong hip hop dancer. Like, I didn't have a lot of experience in it. I could do it, but it wasn't where I thrived. So that really threw me for a loop. And so I was kind of going into these auditions being like, very, I was green. I was approaching LA auditions like I was a New York dancer. If that makes any sense. Like, I had the character shoes, I had the jazz shoes, I had my little leotard. And then, like, I would go, and then there'd be girls that dressed like they literally stepped out of music videos with the makeup and everything. Wow. And it was just like, oh, damn, I didn't know that that's what we were doing. So the learning curve was quick. I had to take tons of dance classes. I had to get headshots. It was much more costlier than I thought it was going to be. And again, I had moved here. By the way, I had $1,000 in my savings at that time. And this was early 2000. And I thought that was, like, going to last me. I was like, oh, I have $1,000. I'll be fine. Yeah. Girl, that $1,000 lasts me a month. Like, once we found our apartment, it was like gone. Yeah. I realized very quickly, like within 6 months, that I had to get a job, because my idea of moving out here was like, oh, I'll just, like, do dance shows, and, like, I know enough people and I'll get gigs. And that's how it worked when I was in Dallas. And it was kind of like, oh no, boo, you are in a whole new location. You got to work yourself from the ground up. And at that point, I didn't have a lot of options for jobs. I never worked in a restaurant. I didn't work as a waiter in a restaurant. So it was like, I didn't really have a lot of options. So, my aunt, who lived out here, she knew someone that worked at Warner Brothers, and through a program that Warner Brothers had at the time of, like, hiring entry-level assistants, I ended up being an assistant at the MIS department at Warner Brothers TV section, which was the Management Information Systems department. So I worked with a lot of, like, tech nerds. Okay. And they were great, but, I quickly went from, like, auditioning to, like, a 9 to 5. Yeah. And through that, I had to let my agent drop me. Yeah. Because he was like, you can never audition. I can't do anything with you. And so, that sucked, but I needed the money. So I worked there for about 2 years until I got, again, the confidence and the security to feel like I could venture out and really hustle on my own.
Were you doing classes at night during this time, like working on your skills?
Yeah, like I would take classes at night. Yeah. I was, if there was, like, things on my own that I could audition for, I would. I would try to meet, like, more friends that were dancers. so I could kind of stay connected to the community and kind of like know what's going on. And that was really helpful. But I knew I just had to take care of myself first. And I've always, there's this whole mindset of like, oh, you should always be acting. And, it's like you got to leave your schedule open. And it's like, that's great and stuff. But sometimes you just got to, you got to eat. And if you got to choose the full-time job and work on your love on the side for a little while, do that. It's not worth it to like, to struggle to do what you love in that sense when you can't even do it to the capacity you want to be able to do it at, because I would want to take class, but I didn't have the money, so it's like, I need to work to get the money to take the classes, to do this. It's got to come from somewhere. So I was still doing that on the side. And then I found the confidence and, I saved enough money to where I was like, okay, I think I'm okay. I'm ready to leave this job and just go out on my own. And I did. And at that point I started teaching dance, which was what I was doing in Dallas. So I would take taught dance classes, I would do like promo jobs. I would do cater waiting, it was like, at that point I was like, I knew the hustle was on. I had to like just have jobs ready to happen. And I was prepared for that. And I did it. And I also started belly dancing. So I learned like a new skill haphazardly through an ad on Craigslist. I joined a belly dance troupe for a couple years. Through that time, I got another agent. I had a few managers come and go, but I got a dance agent and I got a commercial agent. And then that was probably the most stable time in my career where it was like, okay, I just have to hustle to make money to do what I love.
Yeah.
And so, I was still working I would say I had maybe like 3 rotating jobs, and then I would audition for commercials and audition for dance and audition for commercials that had dancing, so it was like a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I would say, I can't remember how many years down the line, but I want to say maybe about 6 years down the line, I was like, I think I want to phase out the dance because the auditioning of it was very all consuming. And one of my epiphanies was I was sent out for one of Janet Jackson's bigger tours, and it was massive, the audition call, like thousands of dancers, like they were just rotating them in and out. And it was a lot of dance auditions tend to be like an all day thing, especially for larger roles. Because at the time there weren't a lot of union regulations around that. So they could just keep you there all day if they wanted to, unless it was an equity thing. And so I remember showing up and seeing all the people there. And I was like, fuck this, I'm out. And I just got back in my car and drove off, and I was like, I'm not doing that. Do I really want to, do I love Janet Jackson? Yes. Do I want to be on her tour for months? Is that like my end all goal? No. There were people there who I knew would, for lack of a better image right now, stab a person to like be on that tour. Like they would sell a kidney. They would do whatever it took. I didn't want it like that. And so I started to really turn my attention more and more towards acting, so at that point I got back into acting classes.
That's a huge turn for you though. Like that, I think a lot of people kind of come to that moment in life where they start to realize the thing that they've been doing, the thing that has been their passion or what everybody knows them for, that they're going to shift gears and it's no longer their thing. It's kind of scary deciding to leave that behind sometimes.
It is.
Yeah. It must have been a big moment for you to make that decision.
What's funny is that there were, I went back to acting class, but after that, the love I could tell for certain jobs wasn't there. Like I would still do auditions every so often because I didn't leave my agent. But there was just, if there was something I really didn't want to do, I would go anyway because it was like, well, you felt like you had to, but I was kind of like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I love dancing, but I don't want to dance for this job. Like, this job doesn't provide anything for me. So it was that realization where I knew I was ready to fall back into acting for real.
Yeah. That's great. That's
great.
great.
And so from there, I got back into acting class, and, you know, I found a love for sketch comedy. My husband, that's how we met.
Yeah.
He posted an ad on Craigslist about a sketch comedy group, and he had just moved here to New York, and I was one of the people that responded. And so, you know, it happened literally around the same time I decided to come back to acting. Mm-hmm. And so I was in this sketch group for, you know, 6 years, and we traveled. We did shows in Canada and Chicago and New York. You know, we did a lot of shows here in LA, but it really strengthened my confidence, not only in acting, but also comedic acting, because for the longest time, I didn't feel like I was funny.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that is right before that happened, I did I was supposed to do a presentation for these writers that were repped at this, at the time, large agency.
Okay.
And I auditioned for them, and they were like, oh, we think you're so great, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do the table read, and then we're going to film this. And, you know, it might be a pilot, blah, blah, blah. And I went to the table read, and after the table read, one of the writers called me, and he was like, yeah, I think we're going to have to let you go. We're going a different way. We just don't think that you have the comedic timing that we need. And I was devastated.
Yeah.
And what was so funny is that after I joined the sketch group, I had kept the script from that particular project. And maybe about 4 years later, I found it, and I read it. And I was like, and at this time I had taken, you know, comedy. I had been at Leslie Kahn. I had worked with Stan Kirsch. Yeah. You know, I was working at places where I was much more familiar with comedic timing and what it needed. And I read the script, and I was like, they weren't funny. The writing was crap. And it's so funny how perspective like that, you could be thinking about, oh, you know, if only I could have been so funny at that audition or whatever. And yeah, there's wizardry you can do with making a script bad better. Yeah. But I remember specifically looking at that script and like going over it and thinking, how could I have made this funnier? How could I have made this funnier? And I read it over and over, and I was like, it wasn't me.
Just wasn't funny.
There was no way to make it funny. The writing just was not as good as they thought it was.
That is so awesome.
So that was a big lesson for me in how we can beat ourselves up also in this business, in this creative business, about past transgressions and things that went wrong, and, you know, things that you thought you lost.
Yeah.
In you know, whatever process, and just how, you know, time can really give you the perspective that you might need in a particular moment.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I've had that a couple of times where, like, I started iOS back in 2006, and then I took a break and I never went back. And so, like, I've had moments where now I'm like, God, if I only stayed and continued and finished the whole program, you know, then I might be like working with some of my peers who, like, you know, like Betsy Sidaro or something like that. Like, or like maybe would have gone to UCB and met these other comedians, and like they, you know, they're so much further along than me and I'm so behind. And it's like, yeah, but you don't know that would have happened, Lisa. You don't, maybe they wouldn't have been your vibe, and you also wouldn't have met all these other amazing people that you work with now. You know? So you just have to let that stuff go.
You know, speaking of the comedy world, like, you know, there's a phrase that comedy is subjective. And I think, yeah, it is. But also, there is a through line.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there is a baseline of where there's like funny is funny.
Yeah.
You know, it's there are certain things that are universal.
Yeah.
And if you don't hit those first, then it's not funny.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can appreciate that something else is funny. It may not always be your type of funny, but you can say, oh, I could see how that's funny to other people. Yeah, for sure. And so you went straight for the comedy in your acting. Had you always been drawn to comedy, or was that just kind of like that was your in and then you just followed that path?
You know, I had never been drawn to comedy until that. So speaking of that story, that thing happened with that where I got dropped from that project. And then I saw this Craigslist ad for my now husband's sketch group.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on Craigslist, like that was like my, what do you call it? My Indeed.com. That's what that was for me back then. I found everything on Craigslist.
Yeah.
So, I had the opportunity for a sketch group, but on the other end, there was an opportunity to be like in this martial arts female group, fighting group, and it sounded so cool, and you know, and I remember asking my boyfriend at the time, I was like, which one do you think I should like do? Like they both are interested in me, but which one? And he was like, I think you should do the martial arts group because like that would be super hot. Like he was all into like looks, and he was like, oh, it'd be hot, like a bunch of hot girls like doing martial arts. Yeah, I'm in for that. And he was like, funny. I don't know if you're really that funny. And I almost took it as a challenge because he mentioned that. And then I just gotten dropped like a few, like maybe like 6 months before with the guys. So I was like, you don't think I'm funny. People don't think I'm funny. I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
And so that's what made me lean towards the sketch comedy. And when I started doing it, I loved it because it fulfilled like the thing that I hadn't had in a while, which is like being on stage, getting an instant response from the audience, writing your own stuff, just creating. And I didn't really even realize how much I love collaborating with other people for like ideas. So it just really, it really fulfilled a lot of things that I needed creatively at that time. Also with helping, you know, hone, I would say my comedic chops.
Yeah.
So I started into it with like, I'm going to show them I'm going to be funny. And then I got into it and I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm funny, but I also have lots to learn about how to be funny.
Yeah.
And it made me want to just kind of dive in even more with that.
Yeah.
And so it was a great entry way, a great gateway drug, I would say, into the comedy world for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did that for about 6, maybe 7 years. And then we did a lot of live shows. And towards the end, the group got smaller and we started transitioning to online.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, also during this time, I was starting to book commercials. And then it was great because it felt like, okay, I'm doing this thing that I love commercially and auditioning. And that's feeling like the financial aspect of it and also a little bit of the creative, but now I have like my own creative thing over here.
Yeah.
And we tried to take the sketch group all the way. Like we're working with an executive producer who had been a showrunner and he was trying to pitch us. And, me and my husband, we were also writing a script for him to like pitch us in two different ways, like as a sketch group and as like a show that was based around the sketch group. So we were really hitting that hard.
Yeah. And
then it didn't pan out, mainly because that producer ended up, he had a lot of, as a lot of them do, have a lot of fires in the iron. Is that the phrase? Irons in the fire. Yeah. I knew something was wrong. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Irons in the fire.
Yeah.
He had a lot of things happening.
Yeah.
So one of his other shows popped off And then that took his attention.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of like, well, we've done everything we could do. And so by that point, we were realizing that for a few of us, that the love was still there, but it had become sort of perfunctory. Like we had let the business sort of supersede the passion of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like, oh, now we're just doing this just to get a show. It doesn't have the same engine. Like we don't love it the way we used to.
Yeah.
And, we were all, I think, personally going in different directions, getting married and having kids and, all that sort of thing. So it just sort of dissipated.
Mm-hmm.
And around that time, I felt a real need to, I was fulfilled commercially, but I wasn't really fulfilled like theatrically. Like I knew I had the goal of like, I wanted to do more TV and more film, but I honestly had not put a lot of energy into it because I thought it would come. And we had a lot of eyes on us during that time, during the sketch comedy, but a lot of things didn't pan out. And I feel like a lot of them didn't pan out because I feel like in the sketch and improv world, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, but it's very insular. Like how you were saying, like, oh, you grow up, you do this show with your friends, and then one of your friends gets a show, and they're a writer and a producer, and then they get all their other friends on the show. Like comedy works a lot like that.
Yep. Yeah.
And so if you don't have those people, then you're sort of like, well, you need an agent or a manager, because what else are you going to do? So we were kind of in, I was kind of in that space where we knew people. Like we were really good friends with another sketch group, the Birthday Boys, who ended up having their own show on IFC. We all appeared on that show. So that's, so we knew that's how it worked. We all got other stuff based on those connections, but auditioning for comedy, just to audition for comedy, based on not being in the sketch group and just as an individual entity, we didn't none of us had those connections. So we all kind of had to find our way. And I knew that meant, okay, I'm going to have to now hunker down and focus back on trying to get an agent and a manager specifically for theatrical.
Yeah.
And so that was my next journey. And, I tried a lot of times, and I think it was just this thing of, someone willing to take a chance on, at that time, a 30-something Black chick.
Yeah.
Because honestly, there wasn't a lot, honestly, in that category. Like you were either really struggling or you were really famous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times agents would be like, oh, given your age, although I never told them what my age was, we don't have any space for you given your age, or it was a lot of BS excuses. And really what it was is that they didn't know how to market me. Yeah. They just did not know. And one day my commercial agent, Janet, who I love, hey, Janet, she's also in the mom group.
Yay.
And she was like, hey, I have this manager. She might be interested in taking new clients. Why don't you meet with her? And I met with her. And then from that point, it was like, all right, game on. You know, me and Sharon, she was added to the team. And theatrical is a slow start when you're older because you're competing with people who have, lots of credits, especially when you're young. Yeah. I remember I was so unprepared in my 20s when I had an agent and manager because I honestly think about how much I took the acting for granted. I would get really good auditions and I wouldn't study because I thought, I know what it is. I'm just going to be me. It's going to be fine. Like that was how I approached it. And now when I think about that, I cringe. I was like, what the F were you thinking, girl?
Oh, yeah. Same. I didn't get really good auditions, but I had auditions and I'm just like, I would do it a couple times. And then that was it. Cause I was like, I don't know, this is embarrassing trying to do this by myself. It was how much time did I waste?
Yeah. I had no idea. No idea. And so, when I really finally started being in the trenches of auditioning theatrically, I was like, oh, okay, this is a muscle I got to practice, like
Yeah.
commercials.
Yeah.
Like commercials, you get to practice on the job. That's what's so great about them, is that you can be crappy in the room a few times, but if your look is great, they're going to keep calling you in. And they're going to work with you, and they know you're going to get better because what? It's a 30-second spot. You have to get better at some point. I mean, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Whereas theatrical, you get the sides, you practice. If you mess up in that room, you might not see that casting director for another 2 years, maybe never.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that was the thing as being older, really gave me perspective on that. Like, oh, I really wasted those 20s.
Oh, yeah.
Not studying.
Yeah, I just thought it was like supposed to be easy peasy. Well, I have a degree in theater, so I should just be able to book it, no problem. No, it doesn't work that way. And they like, this has come up before, but it's like, why don't they teach this to you when you're like actually studying, when you're going to these theater schools, or you're like wherever, if you're in conservatory, whatever it is. They should be like, the business of acting class should be mandatory. It should be built into the curriculum at some point.
Absolutely. Speaking of, I remember when I was in college and we had like our senior class that was supposed to prep us for the world. And sorry, those are my dogs.
Oh, that's okay. I've got one here. He's actually being a good boy and sleeping right now.
Yeah, I just, no one ever told me that there was, I just thought the auditioning process would be so much easier. And I remember being in college and they had the senior class and we thought, oh, we're going to learn like how to navigate the dance world outside of university. Our senior class was Shakespeare. And I remember thinking after, why are we wasting our time on this? Like, we're dancers. We don't know like what it's like to survive as a dancer in New York or LA, or like which place we should be going, or how to get an agent, or any of that. Like, there was none of that in the curriculum. Hopefully they have it now, but then they didn't. So I felt like when we graduated, it was like, good for you. Send you off to the wolves,
Yeah.
So in my 20s, I feel like I spent, a good decade kind of like knocking around, realizing that, all those people that were like, oh, acting is so easy. It's just like being who you are, but like being a different person or whatever. I tried to interpret it like that. And it was like, no, girl, you should have been in acting class. You should have been rehearsing scenes. You should have been doing this. You should have. And what was funny is that, even the reps I had at that time, they didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
So you were just really left, unless you had really good reps, you were left on your own to kind of like figure it out.
Yeah. And then most reps don't have that. I think there are some reps who are now changing and like giving you like a little bit of guidance. And I think the big thing now is like, unless you're trained, they'll straight out tell you, I won't take you on if you're not actively training. But I've
even had friends that have tried to get agents recently, and if they're not in a class, they get sent several sides. Like they basically have to do a bunch of self tapes.
Oh,
like they'll be like, this is the comedy scene, this is the drama scene, this is the procedural. These are all the things we want you to do. Put them on tape. We'll look at them. We'll see if you are worthy of representing.
Yeah.
And it's like, dang, that's, but I get it because, in this new age of auditioning and being an actor, especially now being over 40, it's like, it's a whole different ballpark. So many people have left the industry. The people that in our age bracket you're auditioning with now, they have either a ton of credits, they know their stuff. So for you to enter the space at this point, you have to be on a certain level.
Yeah.
Like you just have to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, how has that been for you, making the transition from your 30s into your 40s? I mean, you also look so young. I'm sure like you still go out for like things on the cusp and in your 30s, but
I still go out for things that are 30 to 40 or like 30s or whatever. It's been very few 20s things.
Yeah.
I did book like maybe 4 years ago something that was like, you had to be in your 20s. I was like, oh, okay.
I am.
Oh, you think I'm 22? Okay. But yeah, I would say the transition, I that is a very loaded question. Here's how it answered. I have to separate it between commercially and theatrically. And I think we also have to put in the variable that we are still in this COVID space.
Yes.
So that's been really interesting navigating, because I was never a person that really had, I wasn't one of those early people that had an Atlanta agent. And so I was already self-taping all the time. Like self-taping was new to me. Mm-hmm. So I would say I definitely spent all of 2020 trying to catch up to that curve, which I think I have caught up to, and in some ways, hopefully surpassed. But I would say I have felt the most change in my career being older commercially, than theatrically, because I'm seeing the people coming up in my age bracket behind me. And so I'm in the space where, like you said, I look young, but I think I also have a more mature energy.
I'm in that same boat. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, is she the young mom anymore? But she might be. I don't know if we think that we want to put her with like a 25-year-old son just yet.
Yeah.
So it's a very weird space. And so I'm not getting as much mom as I was. Like, I feel like my 30s commercially was all mom. That was where I was. I was firmly in mom. Now it's like, well, she could be, depending on how old the kid is, but she's also aunt. She's also, now it's like a lot of businesswoman, stuff.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, to be honest, with that transition, I haven't really figured it out yet. Yeah. Like where I fit in and how my look should transition. So I would say that's still a work in development for me. I'm still figuring it out. Yeah. Theatrically, it has been a lot of fun, and it has been very busy. Like the auditioning has been super busy. I've been able, luckily, to audition for the gamut of, every genre, everything I wanted to. Do I have a wish list of like certain projects I would want to be on more? Yes. Like for me, one of the big things is I would really like to do a period thing. I recently saw, I used to say I was never into Westerns, but then I thought that I was raised on Gunsmoke and Rifleman and Bonanza. And I was like, yeah, of course you love a good Western. But I started watching 1883, the spinoff of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I was like, okay, this is like just in that Reconstruction period of the United States. So I wouldn't be a slave. Thank you. But if there was something for me to play in there, I would love it. And, so I've been hoping or trying to call more of that stuff in, a Perry Mason. Like I just love anything that's period, even if it's later, like 50s through 80s. Like I love doing those type of auditions and kind of setting that stage. So I've really been calling in wanting to do a period TV show. Yeah. Or even a period film. But it's been fun. Have I been booking as much as I would like? No. But what makes me feel good about that is that no one is. There are not a lot of people right now that are saying that they are just booking a ton right now. Yeah. It is rough. And again, the business is going through a transition. Yeah. How would you say for yourself how it's going?
Well, see, I just started getting back at it in 2019. I finished doing Second City, the conservatory in 2018. And then I immediately got pregnant while I was trying to find reps. And then I had my baby in June of 2019, my second child with my second marriage, in June of 2019. And so I was kind of in mom mode, but then like I met a rep and I got commercial reps and I got a manager and she was able to get me a theatrical agent. And so like it's only been in COVID that I've been like auditioning again. And so for me, it's been like really interesting because when I started auditioning again, I was still like coming off of the mom weight and like there's like that kind of mode where like you've just had a baby, and at least for me, like my face is like super round and then I got new headshots, and I got headshots when I was like barely pregnant, and then I got headshots when I was like 8 months or 9 months postpartum. And it's really interesting to see the difference, like my face changed. So I've been like really trying to find out like, where is my niche? Because before I got pregnant again, I felt like I could still like pull off mid to late 30s. And now I feel like I think I'm pretty much in my 40s because I think I carry that energy.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like, I don't know. It's like you said, it's your energy. There's something about, I think, the way that I carry myself now that creates that. So like a lot of the roles that I've been auditioning for have been like, sometimes it's like 50s. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's where I'm at. But
I had one too recently for 50. I feel like sometimes, depending on the category, honestly, they just throw it out there like, we don't have enough. Who do we have in our rock? Who do we know that could like maybe be, 50? I feel like sometimes the casting directors do that. Because I had one recently where it was like 40 to 50. Mm-hmm. And I saw online someone that I'm Facebook friends with that also auditioned for it, who is definitely in their 60s.
Yeah.
That auditioned for it. And I was like, okay, they're doing a wide range. So, because at first I felt bad, and then I saw her, and I was like, okay, I'm all right. They're just expanding this range a little bit wider.
And I think sometimes they don't know what the producers want. I think sometimes the producers don't know what a 40-year-old woman looks like versus a 50-year-old woman and some of that I think is just changing, I mean, like you look at in the 80s, like you could be 50 and you look like a 60 or 70-year-old person,
Right.
And nowadays, I think that's just changed. And so I think some of that is recalibrating. But in terms of like the number of auditions, it's been really, really slow. I've had a few auditions here and there this year, and like that's commercial and theatrical. I don't have my commercial representation anymore. I decided to let them go. I think we just weren't aligned and whatever. And honestly, and I thought like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get a new commercial rep. And I was kind of working towards that. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to let the commercial rep go. Maybe I'll try to get commercial representation later, but the auditions are so far and few between. And the SAG commercial world is so tough right now between taking on a new full-time job, because like you said, sometimes you just got to get your bills paid. So between taking on a new full-time job and starting this podcast and then taking acting class again, I just decided I can let go of the commercial stuff right now. I don't have the energy to put towards something that takes so much energy to gain. And because I think in our category there's so many commercial actors or actresses who have like great relationships with the casting directors that have been doing it for so long, and I've been out of the game for so long. I just don't have those relationships. And it's not to say that I couldn't make my way in there and book it, but it takes so much energy, and we only have so much time in our day and so much energy.
Exactly.
So
it's like, do you want to spend that energy like, re-establishing yourself in the commercial world, or do you want to spend that energy, in the theatrical world and like
Yeah.
auditioning and doing all that sort of stuff. And doing the prep work that's needed for that.
I like you were saying, I'd rather put my energy towards the theatrical stuff and get back into training and work on that craft, because like I was kind of I've been kind of feeling a little insecure about my acting recently, and so I realized, like, Lisa, you need to take a step back and like get back into the work for real
Yeah.
and find that confidence. And it's been working. I will say, my last two classes, I just felt like, okay, I'm doing good work. This is good. This feels good. And
Yeah.
I had some really good auditions this last week, and like where I got a call back. So I'm like, all right, like even if I don't book it, like I got a call back. And this is the second time the office called me in. Okay, I'm getting my confidence back. And sometimes you just have
Yeah.
to do that reassessment with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It helps, like I think there's this idea that like once you have success in your career that it's just going to be more success. No one
Right.
ever tells you, especially with an acting career, that it is on a graph. It is like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
I've had really, really great periods. And I would say now it's in a low period. So
Yeah.
it's like, what do you do with that time? What do you do with your mindset during that? And I think we all sort of second guess ourselves. I
Mhm.
can't tell you how many times I've been like, is there something else I can do like that I really love that I could just leave acting behind? There
Yeah.
isn't. I've loved performing since I was a child. And
Mhm.
so for me, the goal is to keep performing.
Yeah.
And, if it changes, if it maybe not doesn't become a job or it becomes something that I do on the side, it's going to be in my life. But I know I do want it to be the thing that I do. So it's like, how can I help curate the career I love and also keep loving it more and more along the way?
That is, I think that's the hardest part about this job, because there are the ups and downs and nothing is given. There's no guarantees. It makes it really hard to find that balance and to fill the gaps in terms of your financial income, and then also your creative soul when you're not doing work that's giving you money. So now you have to find work, whether it's creating stuff like your sketch team or doing a play or I don't know, just writing, just doing
Yeah.
something. And then I think what's interesting about aging into your career is then if you choose to have a family, finding the balance with your kids and your partner, along with your creative soul that you have to continue to feed and tend to.
Yeah. And it's funny, aging into your career, like there are actors I can think of that probably feel like they've aged out of their career,
Yeah.
and in a sense, I almost feel lucky that I haven't had like this extreme success yet
Mhm.
because there's somewhere to go.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like no one knows me as the hot 21-year-old.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, if you were in that sort of world, how it would feel to like try to work to evolve out of that.
Yeah.
Um, so there is, a little hidden gem of having a career in this business, being older and not being in a place where you are already wildly successful, is that you still get to sort of create who you are and what you want to represent in a sense.
Yeah.
And, it's hard because as you get older, I feel like every sort of career becomes harder
Mhm.
because you get better. But when I think about that aspect of it, it makes me excited because it's like, oh, what is that going to be? Like, what am I going to look back on 20 years from now and like see, because I think you're going to be surprised.
Yeah.
Like, if I can think back on moments now that things that I never thought that I would do. And so it sort of creates some excitement in me to think about me looking back on my career, maybe 20, 30 years from now, and seeing that I evolved into this particular type of actor, or, I'm known for this, or, maybe I'm known for a couple of things and I do them all well. And, or, when you see those actors on screen, you're like, oh, that's what they're in this TV show for. Like, is someone going to watch me and think, oh, yeah, that's why they brought Saudia in.
Yeah.
Like, it's like when you watch a Law and Order and they have like the person, they have like the main guest star, and you're like, they're going to be the killer.
Yeah.
They wouldn't bring in so-and-so unless they did it. It's like that sort of thing. So it's like this level of excitement of like, oh, she's going to pull out her chops because they wouldn't bring her otherwise,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that is something that I hope I build to eventually. And, like, to be quite honest, like, you talk about like finding the success, or if you haven't had success, like I have had on paper what people would look at as like qualifies you as a professional actor. I've had zero success, but I think I have so much to look forward to. I'm still working on getting my legit credits, but I consider myself a professional actor because I'm auditioning and I'm taking the classes.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just, like you said, it's all in time. It's like, and also, you could very well be one of those people that you are now aging into the category where you're about to thrive.
I think that's very much the case for me. I think I just, whatever my casting type is, I'm aging into it. And so the best is yet to come.
Yeah. So much to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. I actually posted about this on my Instagram today. I have these tomato plants in my backyard, and I planted them in the spring, and they did not fruit at all summer, but they've continued to grow and just like get huge. And now all of a sudden they're fruiting. I'm like, we're heading into winter. What are you doing? Like, I mean, I'm glad, I'm excited. Like, look at all these tomatoes I have right now, but that's not the way this is supposed to work. And the same thing, I've got some jalapeno peppers. All of a sudden the jalapenos are coming in. And it occurred to me, I was like, wait a second, this is a metaphor for my life. I'm heading into my autumn, and like now, the abundance might just be on the horizon for me,
Yep. But also what stood out for me, but what's so funny is what also stood out for me with that is the idea that this career, it has its own timing.
Yeah.
We can toil and toil away and be a great actor and do all these things. We can't make anything happen until it's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And that's the frustrating thing about this career. And it's also the exciting thing, because we wouldn't be in it if we didn't feel like that was exciting. If we didn't, we probably would have tapped out already.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I came back for more, so.
See, you want more of it.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you, because I always ask everybody, what kind of advice do you have for someone who is maybe just coming up in this industry, or maybe is trying to make a second go of it, or like a second act career or something?
Let's see. Well, since it's called Making It After 40, I'm going to assume that anybody that's listening to it is probably over 40.
Yeah.
So I would say if you are, listening to this and you are wondering if you should re-enter this, or if you perhaps had a love for acting and you want to make a go of it, I would say keep your love for it at the forefront of everything you do. Because when you have to do a self-tape, when you have to find an agent, a manager, it is very easy to get distracted by the businessy things of this business, especially when you feel like, okay, now I want to make it like an official career and go for it.
Yeah.
I would just say keep the love for it at the forefront, because I think that that will guide you into making the best decisions, not only for your career, for your life.
Yeah.
You know, this decade, this time is just a very different time. You know, we're not, you know, we're looking back on our 20s and our 30s and, you know, how we were laughing about the time that we wasted not working on auditions. It's like, you know, as being in your 40s, now you're thinking about, I have to get 2 kids to school. This self-tape is due at 10. My kids got to be at school by 8. Do I either want to stay up late and do this self-tape after I've put them to bed, or am I going to rush home, slap on some makeup, and get this tape in after school drop-off at 10?
Yeah.
You know, those are the things. And to do that sort of hustle with keeping your life in mind and all the life things that are important, vacations and holidays and spending time with family and being with the friends that you love and just living and exploring life, because all of those things feed into your acting. You also have to think about how logistically, how that stuff is going to fit in.
Yeah.
So it's very important to keep how much you love it at the forefront, because if you do it too long and you realize you don't love it, then you've wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
And at this age, we ain't got a lot of time.
Yeah.
I mean, we do, but we don't.
Yeah. No, but I think that is what you just said. Nobody has kind of framed it in that way on the podcast. And I really love the way that you just presented that, because you really, if you're approaching it in this middle-agedom and assuming that you have a family and you have kids and maybe you even just have animals that you have to take care of, it takes so much time and so much hustle. You have to really be dedicated to it. And like when you framed it that way, it just occurred to me like, yeah, I am driving myself crazy, like running myself rugged, like working all day and then doing the podcast at night and then working on sides for acting class. And I must really love this because, but yeah, you have to truly love it in order to do it, because otherwise your life would seem like there's not as much quality.
Yeah. And it's such a major disruptor to like all the other things that you want to accomplish in your life, you know, and sometimes they can be very antithetical to that. And so you really just have to keep your love for it in perspective. And I think that will guide you, because now, you know, sometimes there are those auditions where I'm like, I don't want to do this audition because they just gave it to me and I don't have the energy to do it. And then I say no. Yeah. And I feel very good about that. And then sometimes there are ones that have a short turnaround and I'm like, I think I could do that. If I could pull it off, I would feel so good about myself. I don't know if I'm going to book it, but I want to do this. Yeah. And then I make time to do it. Yeah. So I think keeping that in perspective will really, as you say, in this middle-agedom, will really guide your career.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to note that if you do have a partner, your partner has to be on board with that lifestyle.
Oh, yes.
I mean, the number of times that I've disrupted my family's life, my husband's life, in order to get self-tapes done or in order to be able to do the acting class alone, you know, like that, it really can be disruptive to their lives as well. So they have to sign off on it too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a good point.
Yeah.
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 Especially if your husband, like mine, works at night and he's at home during the day to help you do self-taping. So he's like, all right, what are we doing today?
Thanks, God bless the actor partner spouses. They put up with so much.
I saw in one acting group, someone made credits for their husband at the end of a self-tape. They didn't send it off, but I was like, that is genius.
Yeah.
Like my husband would love that because it would just be like Brett Butler, you know, DP, director, craft service, editor, producer. Like he would have all those.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's so funny. Okay. So then my last question before we wrap it up is, what does making it mean to you? And maybe it's different now than it was when you were younger. But yeah, what does success or making it mean to you?
Wow. Okay. I used to think when I was in my 20s that making it was like being a starving dancer, living in New York with a boyfriend that played a trumpet, and we lived in a warehouse, and we were cold, but we had each other for warmth. That was literally what I thought was successful, because I just thought you're an artist, you're supposed to starve, but you're still happy.
Yeah.
That is not it anymore.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say.
What happened to this drum set?
It's funny, and that's actually a reference of a guy I had a crush on all throughout high school. He played the trumpet, and so that was a part of my fantasy.
Yeah.
Anyway, that is not what it is anymore. I would say making it for me is having times where I can do the creative things that I love, and also have my family along for the ride and celebrate in that. So that they can see, because like you said, the whole family, especially your spouse, is involved in this career.
Yeah.
So I feel like making it for me is for them to see the success of my creative toils, but also enjoy in it. They are able, it's their success also.
Yeah.
So if there's a moment that I feel like they're along for the ride with me, and that they are celebrating this creative endeavor with me, and they understand how important it is to me, and they're willing to really hold me and support me. And then I can show them, see, this is what you supported. Like this, what I was doing. And they can be like, oh my God, that was what it was. It doesn't matter how big or small that is. To me, that is making it.
Yeah. I love that. And I agree with that so much. Like, even like, I feel that with my kids. I want my kids to be proud of me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like when my daughter now, like when I did during the pandemic, I did like a short little solo show, and it was streamed. It was just something that I just really wanted to do. I wrote it myself. My husband, when I got back home, he had taken a video of her watching me do it. And she was like, that's mommy. That's, and it just, thinking about all the work I had put into doing that, like it was just 15 minutes of me on stage. I hadn't done anything like that in a long time. And seeing her marvel at that, and also like when I was rehearsing it, like, what are you doing? I'm doing this thing, and her not understanding it, but sort of like putting together, oh, that's what it was. To me, that's, I made it.
Yeah.
That's a memory embedded in her mind that will hopefully lead her on her own creative endeavor or path or whatever, that she will realize that, hey, if I can create something and it can go somewhere.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that so much. Saudia, this has been so awesome. I feel like we just started to scratch the surface, to be honest. So I hate that we have to wrap it up, because I really enjoyed talking to you, and I felt like we were like we really got somewhere, and it was some beautiful things that you shared. So,
oh, thank you. Oh, I love this. It was great talking to you, and finally putting like a voice and a face. Well, I saw your face, but like a voice,
a personality,
and a energy to, and a personality to a Facebook page.
Yeah. This has been great. Well, I hope I get to see you in person. We'll have to meet up at one of these in-person mom groups one day.
Yes, I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
awesome.
Thank you so much again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Talk soon.
Thank you all for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to follow Saudia on Instagram at Saudia Rashed. That's SaudiaRashed. Also, check out her podcast, That One Blank Friend, which is coming back in 2023. And please, if you're enjoying the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. And hey, if you want to support the show, you can use the link in the show notes to buy me a coffee. Be sure to follow the show on Instagram at makingitafter40, the number 40. And lastly, to catch up on what I'm doing when I'm not podcasting, check out my Instagram at Lisa Rodriguez. Thank you everyone for listening, and have a great week.